Welcome to Scoli Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let the day soften around you and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1: Arrival at Dusk. The year is 1895, in the final years of Queen Victoria's long reign, and dusk has come early to a provincial town somewhere in Britain. It is a late autumn evening, cool but not bitter, with a light mist resting over the roofs and chimneys. The upper windows of the shops remain visible, and the lamps along the street shine within modest circles of pale gold. Rain passed through during the afternoon, leaving the paving stones dark and smooth. Each lamp is reflected beneath itself in a wavering line, so the quiet street seems to hold two rows of lights, one upright in the evening air, the other trembling softly underfoot. The way to the station follows a gently rising street. On one side stand narrow brick houses with small steps and iron railings. Curtains have been drawn across most windows, though here and there a warm room remains visible. A chair faces the hearth. Shadows move slowly behind the glass. On the other side, shops are closing for the evening. Wooden shutters are being fitted into place. A boy carries an empty basket through a side door, while a woman locks a haberdashery and tests the handle before walking away. Farther off, a church bell marks the quarter hour, its sound softened by distance and mist. Above the town hangs the faint scent of coal smoke, in drifts from household chimneys, workshops, and the locomotives beyond the station walls. Coal heats rooms, boils kettles, powers factories, and draws trains from one county to another. In the cool air, pale threads of smoke rise above the roofs and disappear into the fading sky. The station first announces itself not by its platforms, but by its clock. It stands above the entrance in a square tower of red brick, with pale stone trim. The round face bears dark Roman numerals in two firm black hands. The longer hand has passed the half hour, the shorter is approaching 6. This clock is not merely an ornament. It is a working instrument, consulted by passengers, porters, clerks, guards, and engine crews. Other clocks in the offices, on the platforms, near the sidings, and inside the signal box are expected to agree with it. They show Greenwich Mean Time. By 1895, Greenwich Mean Time is Britain's legal standard, and railway companies have used a common standard for decades. Before railways became widespread, towns often kept local time according to the sun. Noon arrived when the sun stood highest over that particular place. As this happened at slightly different moments farther east or west, neighboring towns could keep clocks that differed by several minutes. Such differences mattered little when most journeys proceeded at the pace of a horse. Trains, however, required dependable timetables. A departure listed for 6 o'clock needed to mean the same thing at every station along the route. Railway time brought distant clocks into agreement, while telegraph systems carried time signals quickly from place to place. There is no daylight saving time in Britain on this evening in 1895. The clock remains on Greenwich Mean Time throughout the year, through the long light of summer and the early dusk of late autumn. Beyond the tower, the station extends farther than it first appears. Long brick wings contain offices, waiting rooms, a refreshment room, and a parcels department. Behind them rises the broad curve of an iron and glass roof, sheltering several platforms and lengths of track from much of the rain. Elsewhere in the grounds are sidings, water facilities for locomotives, and a signal box, from which movements are carefully regulated. On some nights, a sleeping car passes through as part of a longer service. These spaces belong to the same working station, though many remain hidden from the street. Late Victorian railway stations have developed a recognizable character. Different railway companies favor different styles, including Gothic details, rounded windows, towers, patterned brick, decorative timber, and intricate ironwork. Here several influences have settled together: red brick, pale stone banding, tall arched windows, dark ironwork, and a slate roof surround the central clock. The entrance is broad enough for travelers, luggage, and porters' handcarts, yet its size is practical rather than grand. It has been shaped by years of arrivals and departures. The building has been enlarged more than once. One wing is older and plainer, while another has broader windows and newer stonework. A change in the brick marks where one section joined the next. Yet the station is held together by use, repetition, and the steady passage of people through its doors. Under the great roof, soot has dimmed many panes of glass. Smoke from locomotives rises toward the iron ribs, and although the roof is maintained, a gray film gradually returns. The last evening light passes through softly, giving the interior the muted color of a cloudy sky. From outside, the station sounds are subdued. Steam is released somewhere beyond the wall. A trolley wheel crosses a joint in the paving. A carriage door closes beneath the roof, and a porter calls briefly from a distant platform. Then a bell rings once and becomes still. Near the entrance, an experienced night porter stands beneath the clock. His dark uniform is tidy from long habit rather than display. Brass buttons catch the lamplight, and his peaked cap shades a calm, observant face. He has spent enough evenings here to distinguish a traveler in haste from one who simply wishes to look. Tonight there is no need for haste. The porter glances toward the clock, and then toward the street. He gives a small nod of greeting. "Evening," he says. "You have come at a quiet hour." Behind him, a horse-drawn cab moves away from the curb. Its wheels pass over the wet road with a low murmur. The horse's breath forms a brief white cloud and vanishes. Across the forecourt, a handcart rests beside a wall, with a luggage label bearing the name of a northern town. The porter turns toward the entrance. At close range, the station doors are taller than they appeared from the street. Their upper panels contain thick glass, while the dark wooden panels below have been worn smooth by years of hands, sleeves, baskets, and traveling trunks. The porter opens one door and holds it. For a moment, outside and inside meet at the threshold. Behind you lie the damp street, fading sky, mist, and quiet clock. Ahead waits a warmer light. The scent of wet stone gives way to paper, polished wood, brass, woolen coats, and the faint coal warmth of a nearby fire. The outdoor hush becomes the muted rhythm of ticket clerks, slips of paper crossing counters, coins placed carefully upon wood, and footsteps moving over the tiled floor. Above the entrance, the clock continues its steady work. Inside, the station keeps its own measured rhythm, and then, unhurried, you enter the booking hall. Chapter 2. The Booking Hall. The door closes gently behind you, leaving the damp evening beyond its thick glass. Within the booking hall, the air is still and temperate. A coal fire glows behind a dark iron grate, sufficient to soften the chill carried in upon coats and scarves. Its warmth mingles with the dry scents of paper, ink, polished wood, and wool. The hall is broad without being grand. Cream-colored tiles line the lower walls, with painted plaster rising toward a ceiling crossed by dark beams. A row of lamps casts quiet circles of light across the floor and catches in the brass fittings around the booking office windows. Only a few travelers are here. One gentleman reads a notice board with his hands folded behind him. Beside the fire, a woman and her daughter sit upon a wooden bench, their traveling cases close to their feet. At the counter, another passenger speaks quietly to the booking clerk. The porter who welcomed you from the street remains nearby. He does not hover, but waits with the easy attentiveness of someone accustomed to helping uncertain travelers begin their journeys. Along one wall, the booking office is divided into several windows, though only one is in use tonight. Behind it sits a clerk in a dark coat, surrounded by shelves, ledgers, racks, and pigeonholes. Everything has its place and lies within reach of a practiced hand. The passenger at the counter receives his ticket and change, then steps aside. Before looking up, the clerk draws one neat line in a ledger. His pen gives a soft scratch. The page is turned, and another orderly space waits to be filled. At the window, the wooden counter is smoothed beneath your hand. A small brass grill frames the opening. Through it, the clerk asks for your destination and whether the journey is one way or includes a return. His words are clear and unhurried. A railway journey in the 1890s often begins with a small piece of cardboard. Behind the clerk stand narrow racks filled with pre-printed cards. These Edmondson tickets are widely used by railway companies. Each firm little rectangle has been prepared in advance and stored in an orderly slot, allowing the clerk to find the required ticket without writing every detail by hand. He selects the proper card and places it into a dating press. There is a brief movement and a subdued click. The date is impressed upon the ticket, marking the day of issue, and the little card slides across the counter. It is a modest object, yet it carries the practical beginning of the journey. Its edges are clean, and its lettering small and precise. You turn it once beneath the lamp, feeling the firm card between your fingers, before placing it safely in an inner pocket. Beside the window lies a company timetable, its creases softened by frequent use. Columns of station names descend the paper, with times arranged beside them in close rows. Smaller notes refer to connections, particular services, and changes of train. Railway timetables can be intricate. A traveler may consult a company timetable, a public railway guide, a posted notice, or a destination board. Even an experienced passenger may pause over the smaller print, tracing a line with one finger before checking the clock. The porter steps nearer without blocking the lamplight. He studies the page, then quietly explains where the connection is to be made. His finger follows one row of figures and moves to the next. What first appeared to be a thicket of names and times becomes a simple sequence. Leave from this station, change at the junction, and continue upon the next train. Across the hall, destination boards hang near the doors leading toward the platforms. Their form varies between railway companies. Some are painted, some printed, and others assembled from sections that may be changed as trains are prepared. Here, pale lettering upon a dark ground lists the principal towns along the evening route. The station's information is carried by printed paper, painted lettering, clocks, notices, and the knowledge of its employees. Travelers look, read, and quietly ask when necessary. A clerk or porter offers a few practical words, then allows the calm routine of the journey to continue. Near the side of the hall, your case waits beside the porter's handcart. At a small desk, a paper luggage label is prepared. The destination and route are written clearly. The porter threads the label through the handle, tightens it, and turns the writing outward. Such labels help railway workers sort luggage as it passes from the hall to the platform and onward to the luggage van. If a change is required farther along the journey, the written route helps guide the case. The porter gives the label a final, gentle pull. It holds firmly. For belongings not required at once, the station provides a cloakroom. Despite its name, it is not reserved only for cloaks. Cases, bags, parcels, and other possessions may be deposited temporarily, with a receipt allowing the owner to collect them later. Shelves and numbered spaces keep everything in order. The booking hall also connects with a parcels office, a telegraph office, the station master's office, and other rooms required for daily business. A pen scratches softly behind a door. A drawer opens and closes. Somewhere nearby, paper is folded along an old crease. These small sounds belong to the station's steady pattern. Opposite the booking window stands the station bookstall, a dark wooden kiosk with illustrated periodicals facing outward. Newspapers lie in careful stacks beside public railway guides, books, stationery, and inexpensive novels intended to accompany travelers through the passing miles. By the 1890s, W. H. Smith operates an extensive network of station bookstalls. For many passengers, such a stall is a familiar part of beginning a journey. A newspaper may serve for the first part of the route, while a modest novel can be opened beneath a carriage lamp and set aside when sleep begins to approach. The keeper loosens the string around a fresh bundle of papers. The pages make a soft, dry whisper. He stacks one copy above another and taps the quarters square against the counter. For a while, the booking hall settles into an easy balance. The clerk waits behind his brass grill. The porter stands beside the labeled case. The woman and her daughter remain near the fire, while the gentleman continues reading the notice board. Above them hangs the station clock. Its minute hand advances without haste. Those waiting beneath it occasionally glance upward, then return to a book, a quiet conversation, or contemplation of the fire. Time gives shape to the room, but does not trouble it. There is still a comfortable interval before departure. Your ticket is secure, the connection explained, and the luggage label firmly tied. The porter lifts the case onto his wooden truck and settles it beside two smaller bags. Then he eases the long handle toward himself. The iron-rimmed wheels begin to turn across the tiled floor with a low, regular murmur. You follow beneath the steady clock, past the benches and the quiet bookstall. Ahead, doors open toward the platforms, where lamplight rests beneath the great roof, and the evening railway continues its measured work. Chapter 3. Porters on the platform. The doors from the booking hall open upon quiet hinges, and the luggage truck passes through first. Its iron-rimmed wheels leave the smooth tiles and meet the platform paving with a deeper, more measured sound. Each joint beneath them adds a gentle note to the rhythm. A low hum, a small tap, and then another hum. Beyond the doors, the platform extends beneath orderly rows of lamps. Their light rests upon carriage windows, painted signs, polished door handles, and the pale edges of drifting steam. The air is cooler here. It carries the mild scent of coal smoke, damp stone, leather, and the warm machinery waiting beside the track. The porter guides the truck without hurry. He wears a dark coat over a buttoned waistcoat, with sturdy trousers and a peaked cap bearing the railway company's mark. At another station, belonging to another company, the colors and cut might be different. Each railway chooses its own cloth, buttons, badges, and bands of braid. Yet the purpose of the uniform remains much the same. It allows a passenger to recognize a member of staff at once. Several other porters are at work along the platform, similarly dressed. One has put on a heavy wool overcoat against the evening chill. Another carries a hand lamp, its flame protected by glass and metal. Their company buttons catch the lamplight whenever they turn. The men do not move in perfect unison, yet their work fits together with the ease of long practice. "Two for the north train," one says quietly. "Very good," another replies. "Luggage van at the rear, thank you." The phrases are brief and courteous. Each gives only the information needed. A trunk changes hands. A label is checked. A leather strap is drawn firmly around a traveling case, not so tightly that the case is marked, but securely enough to keep it closed throughout the journey. Your porter slows beside a larger, four-wheeled luggage truck. It has a broad wooden bed and a long handle for steering. Several trunks already rest upon it, arranged with their flatter sides together. Heavy pieces have been placed below, while lighter bags sit above. A basket with a fastened lid has been kept clear of anything that might press against it. The porter studies the labels before adding the modest case from the booking hall. "Best to read twice," he says, almost to the luggage itself. A case may travel very faithfully in quite the wrong direction if its label is overlooked. He lifts the case with both hands, turns it so that the destination remains visible, and settles it carefully among the other pieces. There is strength in the movement, but no display of it. The work is physical and repeated many times through a shift. Unnecessary effort is not wasted. Porters are often remembered simply as the men who carried passengers' bags. Carrying was certainly part of their work. They answered questions and directed travelers toward the proper platform. They handled and stored luggage, loaded the luggage vans attached to trains, and assisted people as they entered or left their carriages. Near departure time, a porter might close carriage doors after making sure that hands, coats, and parcels were safely clear. Some called out a station name or announced a train's principal destinations in a steady voice intended to carry beneath the roof. When the platforms were quieter, there were other tasks. Porters swept away dust and scraps of paper. They replaced notices, removed outdated timetables, moved benches when required, and helped keep the public parts of the station orderly. On certain night services, they might also supply rugs or pillows, according to the arrangements of the route and company. At a large station, these duties could be divided among several men. One might work mainly with passengers' luggage. Another might be known as a parcels porter and spend much of his shift among hampers, boxes, and consignments near the parcels office. An indicator porter could be responsible for changing destination boards or other displays, helping passengers see where a train was going and from which platform it would leave. The exact names and boundaries of these roles varied according to local practice. Here, the responsibilities overlap only where it is sensible for them to do so. No porter casually steps into the specialized place of a guard, signalman, driver, or fireman. Those railwaymen have their own training and clearly defined duties. The porter understands the importance of such boundaries. A station depends upon many people completing their own work carefully, then passing clear information from one person to another. A second truck approaches, this one balanced on two high wheels. Its porter keeps the handles level, allowing most of the load to rest over the axle. Though the cases are heavy, the wheels roll with a calm and even motion. "Room beside the pillar?" he asks. "There will be," your porter answers. "Bring it gently round." The two men guide the trucks past one another. A small adjustment of a handle creates enough space. Nothing is hurried, no voice is raised. The wheels pass over the platform joints, and both loads continue upon their separate courses. Farther along, a family waits near a carriage. One porter points toward a painted number on the door, then lifts a valise onto the rack inside. Nearby, another bends over a luggage label and reads it beneath his lamp. A third replaces a temporary notice on a board, smoothing its corners before stepping back to make certain that it hangs straight. Most public-facing operational staff at a British station in 1895 are men. Women are present in some refreshment, cleaning, clerical, or waiting room positions, depending upon the station and its company. Large-scale employment of women in many station roles will come later, particularly during the First World War, when railway work and national service alter long-established patterns of employment. For now, along this lamplit platform, the dark uniforms move steadily between doors, trucks, benches, and luggage vans. The porter's uniform may lend the work a formal appearance, but it does not make the duties easy. Railway work is disciplined and physically demanding. A shift may begin early, end late, or extend across irregular hours. Lifting is frequent, and much of the working day is spent standing or walking upon hard surfaces. Courtesy must be maintained even when a platform is busy or the weather is cold. Memory, patience, and close attention are as necessary as strength. A porter must remember which luggage belongs to which service. He must notice labels, carriage numbers, platform signs, and spoken instructions. He must know when to offer guidance and when to leave a passenger quietly waiting. Around him, the station changes from minute to minute, yet the work remains orderly because each small action is completed with care. Passengers sometimes offer a modest tip in return for assistance, though railway companies differ in their rules and attitudes toward the practice. Here, no coin passes between hands. The porter simply checks your case once more. He tests the strap, reads the label, and gives a small nod, satisfied that the luggage is ready for the proper train. The four-wheeled truck moves onward. Its wooden platform gives a faint creak beneath the trunks, while the metal rims make their steady pattern over the paving. Hum, tap, and hum again. A few yards farther on, the porter draws gently back upon the long handle. The wheels begin to slow. Their murmuring fades, and the truck comes to rest beside a painted iron column. For a moment, the porter remains there with one hand upon the handle. Around him, the other men continue their familiar rounds. A carriage door closes softly. A label is checked beneath a lamp. Somewhere along the platform, a courteous voice says, "This way, if you please," and footsteps turn toward the waiting train. Then the porter looks upward. Following his gaze, your attention leaves the trunks, straps, labels, and resting wheels. It travels slowly along the tall iron column, past the lamps and the pale curls of steam, toward the great roof that shelters every platform below. Chapter 4. Beneath the Great Roof. The painted column rises from the platform in a long, slender line. Near its top, it divides into decorative brackets, curved pieces of iron resembling broad leaves or quiet branches. They are ornamental, but they also help carry the weight above. Victorian railway builders often join decoration and usefulness in this way. Even a support among trunks, benches, and handcarts might be given a pleasing form. Your gaze follows the brackets upward into the shadows of the station roof. Railwaymen call this broad shelter a train shed or an overall roof because it spans the platforms and the tracks between them. Beneath it, passengers may board in relative shelter from rain and frost, while engines and carriages stand together in one immense interior. By daylight, the glass admits a pale brightness. At this hour, the roof seems to hold the evening within a framework of iron, timber, soot-darkened glazing, and reflected lamps. The porter remains beside the luggage truck. Though accustomed to the view, he grants it a moment of attention. "It has grown over the years," he says. "At first the station was smaller. Then more passengers came, more goods were carried, and more trains were added to the timetable. Like many stations built earlier in the 19th century, this one was enlarged more than once. One portion belongs to an older train shed, another was added with a new platform. Farther away, a narrower canopy follows a later extension. The result is not perfectly matched. One span is higher than its neighbor. Some columns have plain capitals, while others carry curling brackets. Timber appears between sections of ironwork. Glazed panels give way to slate, and the platforms do not all begin or end together. Yet the separate parts have settled into companionship, joined by years of steam and weather, repairs, and daily use. High above, wrought iron ribs cross the darkness. Wrought iron shaped by hammering and rolling can form long members that carry weight across a broad space. Between the ribs are trusses, frameworks arranged to spread the roof's load. Cast iron poured into molds is more often found in the columns below. Each material has been placed where its qualities are useful. Some sections of glazing rise and fall in narrow ridges. This ridge and furrow glazing catches daylight from different directions, while the shallow valleys between panes guide rainwater away. From the platform, the pattern resembles dim folds extending toward the far end of the station. The glass is not clear. Years of locomotive smoke have laid a gray film across it. Coal smoke and soot gather wherever steam engines work beneath a roof, and cleaning so high above the rails is neither simple nor constant. During the day, the glass still softens the interior with light. At night, gas lamps shine upward and return as faint amber reflections, partly concealing the ribs and trusses beyond. For a moment, it is difficult to tell where the roof ends and its reflections begin. Below, the lamps form warm pools at measured intervals. Gas travels through pipes to burners within glass fittings. Some lamps use the newer gas mantles introduced during the previous decade. A mantle is a treated mesh that glows when heated, producing a brighter light than an older naked burner. Even so, the illumination is dim and uneven. Around each lamp lies a circle of cream and gold. Between them are quieter stretches of brown, green, and gray. A brass fitting gleams briefly. The edge of a bench appears, then recedes. A porter crosses one pool of light, his buttons shining for a moment before they darken again. Oil lamps remain familiar on the railway, especially at rural stations beyond the easy reach of mains gas. Electric lighting also exists in Britain in 1895, though it is not yet universal. Here, a limited newer installation serves several offices beyond the platforms. Beneath the overall roof, gas remains the dependable evening light. A shallow canopy extends along the platform, lower than the train shed, and offering immediate shelter near the carriage doors. Slender columns support it, their brackets decorated with pierced patterns. Above it, the great roof encloses platforms, coaches, and tracks together. Steam drifts upward from beyond the waiting train. It spreads into a thin white veil. Passing through the gaslight, its edges become pale gold. For several seconds it gathers beneath a roof rib, then loosens. The station is too large and well ventilated to hold it as a permanent cloud. One strand passes above a carriage roof, another curls around a column, and both fade into the darkness. The sounds beneath this great height are equally changeable. A boot heel touches stone far along the platform, and the note returns as a softened echo. A carriage door closes with a padded wooden sound that travels upward and slowly fades. Behind you, a handcart begins to roll. Its wheels cross a joint in the paving. A gentle beat, then another. Then the sound is lost beneath the roof. Voices become murmurs before reaching the farther platforms. A station bell gives one measured note, and the great interior receives it without hurry. The porter rests one hand on the truck handle. Together you look along the layered spans. Old iron stands beside newer iron. Glazed ridges meet darker slate. Lofty arches rise above modest canopies. Columns divide the view into orderly intervals. Nothing is quite regular, yet everything has a place. The roof carries traces of changing traffic and workmanship. It is less like a room designed at one moment than a long history gathered beneath one shelter. Each addition belongs to a different period, but all now share the same lamplight, faint soot, and distant sounds of railway work. Another breath of steam crosses a lamp and briefly dims its glow. When it passes, the light is steady again. Reflections hover in the glazing, some like lamps suspended in darkness, others blurred by soot and distance. Farther down the platform, a railway worker passes a bench, a luggage barrow, and a row of carriage doors. At each lamp his shadow shortens. Between the lamps it lengthens. Light, then shade, a few quiet steps, then light again. The porter draws the luggage truck closer to the painted column, leaving it safely clear of the platform edge. For another moment neither of you moves. Above, the immense roof seems still. Those small changes continue. Steam vanishes, reflections tremble, a faint draft passes among the timber and iron. Then comes a low, patient sound. Water moves through a pipe. After it comes the settling murmur of warm metal. That will be the engine, the porter says. He walks at an easy pace along the coaches, and you follow beneath the uneven lamps. Carriage windows hold dim reflections, while the rails extend through amber light and gentle shadow. High above, the lamps appear again in the smoky glass, as though another station rested upside down in the roof. The sound of water grows clearer. Beneath it comes a quiet breath of steam, and the soft ticking of cooling metal. Beyond the final passenger carriage, an engine waits in the shadows. Chapter 5. A Steam Engine Resting. Beyond the final passenger carriage, an engine waits quietly in the shadows. Its chimney rises toward the glazed roof, though it does not reach the highest bands of lamplight. Along the dark boiler, polished fittings catch small reflections of amber and gold. The broad driving wheels stand perfectly still, and the steel connecting rods rest motionless beside them. A faint veil of vapor gathers near the rails, drifts around the wheels, and thins into the cool station air. The porter pauses at a respectful distance. "She has finished one duty," he says, "and will have another later. For now, the locomotive is resting." Yet rest for a steam engine does not mean that every part has grown cold. Deep within the firebox, a carefully managed fire remains alight. Its glow can be glimpsed when the fireman opens the firehole door for a moment. Orange light falls across his sleeves and touches the footplate beneath his boots. Then the door closes, and the glow becomes a narrow line around the iron edge. The firebox is the strong chamber in which coal burns. At its bottom is a grate, an iron framework that supports the fuel while allowing air to pass upward. Ash falls beneath it, into a space from which it can later be removed. The fireman does not simply throw coal inside without thought. He studies the fire, noting where it burns brightly and where it has grown thin. With a long shovel and practiced movements, he places coal where it is needed, spreading the fuel in a measured way. Tonight, because the engine is standing, the fire need not be driven hard. It must provide enough heat to maintain useful boiler pressure for a later movement, but no more than the work requires. A roaring blaze would waste coal and water. The fireman works with restraint, opening the firehole door briefly, making a small adjustment, and closing it again. Within the boiler, the fire's heat follows a longer path than one might first imagine. Hot gases from the fire pass through many narrow tubes running along the boiler. Water surrounds those tubes inside the strong metal shell. As heat passes through the tube walls, the water grows hot and produces steam. The steam gathers in the upper part of the boiler, above the water level, and remains there under pressure until it is required. A boiler is more than a large kettle. It is a pressurized vessel, made to contain great heat and force. Its gauges, valves, pipes, and water level must all be watched with care. The driver and firemen learn to recognize not only what each instrument shows, but also how the whole locomotive feels and sounds. Their judgment comes through training, repetition, and long experience. On the footplate, the driver glances at a pressure gauge mounted among polished handles and copper pipes. He rests one hand on the edge of the cab and looks along the platform toward the signals. When the engine is moving, he must observe those signals, judge the speed, control the steam and braking, and remain attentive to the condition of the locomotive. Beside him, the fireman manages the fire and watches the boiler water, while assisting the driver with the shared duties of the journey. They exchange only a few words. Neither needs to explain what has become familiar through years of practiced work. The porter points toward the cylinders, mounted low near the front of the locomotive. "When steam is admitted there," he says softly, "that is where the motion begins. Inside each cylinder is a piston. Steam enters and pushes the piston in one direction. It is then directed so that it pushes the piston back again. This backward and forward movement passes through strong metal rods. The connecting rods turn that straight movement into the rotation of the great driving wheels. Now, however, no steam is driving the pistons. The wheels remain at rest. The rods neither rise nor fall. Drops of oil shine in small cups and around the joints, ready to reduce friction when the parts begin moving again. Under the lamps, Each piece of machinery appears clearly defined. There is the smooth rim of a wheel, then a dark spoke, a polished pin, a long rod, and a solid bearing. Each part has its place. Each waits quietly beside the others. When the locomotive is working, exhaust steam leaves the cylinders and travels upward through the chimney. Its passage helps draw the hot gases through the boiler tubes and encourages air to move through the fire below. In this way, the exhaust steam helps the fire burn more strongly while the locomotive is pulling its train. The familiar beat of a moving steam engine comes from these regular releases. There is no such beat now. Only a subdued thread of vapor escapes near wheel height. Somewhere within the boiler comes a low, contained murmur, followed by the faint ticking of warm metal. For a moment, a safety valve above the boiler lifts with a brief and forceful rush. It is not a whisper, but a firm release of pressure. The sound fills the space beneath the roof, then ends almost at once. The driver glances at the gauge again. All remains in order. Behind the locomotive stands the tender. It resembles a short, heavy wagon closely joined to the cab, but it is not the engine itself. It carries the supplies needed for the journey, additional coal and water. The coal forms a dark, uneven slope within it. Here and there, a broken surface catches the lamplight with a dull gleam. The water remains out of sight in the tender's tank, ready to replenish what the boiler uses along the way. A damp trace of steam settles on the tender's painted side. Coal smoke lingers beneath the station roof, mingling gently with the scents of soot, warm metal, and hot oil. Together, they belong to the working atmosphere of the railway, just as leather, wool, paper, and tea belong to the booking hall and waiting rooms. The porter walks slowly beside the tender, keeping well clear of the rails. One of the crew descends from the footplate and moves along the locomotive with an oil can. He bends to examine a bearing, touches a fitting, and looks beneath the frame. His lamp casts a steady circle across the still machinery. He finds nothing requiring more than a little oil and a brief wipe with a cloth. Warm vapor curls around his boots and passes away. From this close distance, the locomotive seems less like a single object than a gathering of many carefully connected parts. Coal burns upon the grate. The fire heats gases. Those gases pass through the boiler tubes and warm the surrounding water. The water produces steam. Steam enters the cylinders and pushes the pistons. Connecting rods turn that movement into the rotation of the driving wheels. Exhaust steam leaving through the chimney helps draw the fire. Coal and water are carried in the tender, while driver and fireman keep the entire process in careful balance. Yet all that stored purpose is quiet for the present. The fire is maintained with restraint. The rods remain still. The wheels rest upon polished rails. The two crewmen continue their inspection without haste, attentive to small sounds and small signs. Even a resting engine must be looked after. Beyond the passenger platforms, several lamps move steadily through the dimness. Their bearers pass around the tall outline of a water crane, then disappear for a moment behind the tender. Farther on lie the quieter edges of the servicing yard, where coal, water, oil, and patient maintenance prepare each locomotive for the miles ahead. The porter watches the lamps for a little while, then he turns toward them. Together, you leave the warm engine beneath the great roof and follow their measured glow. Chapter 6. Water, Coal, and Quiet Maintenance. The measured glow of the lamps leads beyond the passenger platforms, toward a part of the station that most travelers seldom notice. Here, the broad roof gives way to smaller canopies and open stretches of evening sky. Ahead lie the servicing roads, where locomotives are prepared for journeys to come. The porter walks beside you, keeping to the edge of the working ground. This is not his department. His duties belong among passengers, luggage, parcels, and platforms. Yet after many years at the station, he knows the pattern of the engine yard. Tonight he has a folded message for the foreman, and so follows the familiar path between a brick wall and a row of toolboxes. Nearby, a locomotive stands beneath a water column. The tall iron pipe has a long, movable arm, rather like the neck of a patient nettle bird. Such water cranes may stand beside platforms or along special servicing roads. Their purpose is simple and essential. A steam locomotive uses a great quantity of water. Heat changes the water in its boiler into steam, which does its work in the cylinders before much of it passes away through the chimney. As the miles go by, the supply diminishes and must be renewed. A shed worker swings the heavy arm over the open water tank in the tender. Another waits beside the valve, his lantern on the ground. At the fireman's signal, he turns the handle. Water rushes through the pipe. The sound spreads across the yard and settles into the night. A loose chain taps against the column. Beneath the tender, scattered drops darken the wooden sleepers. The fireman watches carefully. The engine must carry enough water for the work ahead, without allowing it to spill needlessly. At last he lifts his hand. The valve closes. The rush becomes a murmur, then a trickle. Together the men guide the arm away and settle it beside the column. Coal must also be replenished, though heavy coaling is generally carried out away from passenger platforms. At an engine shed, coal stage, or servicing area, fuel can be loaded without bringing coal dust close to first-class passengers or sleeping cars. Here, a low coal stage stands in shadow, its rough bins holding the fuel that will feed locomotive fires through the coming hours. The tender already contains a broad heap, shaped by shovel and practiced judgment. The coal must lie where the fireman can reach it during the journey. The work is heavy, and black dust settles readily on sleeves, boots, and faces. One laborer carries, while another levels the load. A third returns the tools to their proper places. No moving belt carries the coal. The work belongs to hands, shovels, strong backs, and familiar routines. Each person knows when to step forward and when to wait. The porter pauses at a small brick office and gives his message to the foreman. After a quiet word, he rejoins you beside the wall, safely clear of the rails and crews. Farther down the servicing road, another locomotive stands over an ash pit. Beneath every coal fire, ash gathers. Harder pieces called clinker may form when mineral matter in the fuel fuses under great heat. These remains must be removed so that air can continue to pass properly through the fire. In 1895, much of this handling is done by hand. Men use long tools and shovels around the hot firebox and the pit below. The labor is dirty, and the heat demands caution. Heavy tools, narrow spaces, hot metal, and the deep pit all require attention. One man works while another holds a lamp. A third waits until the way is clear. There's the scrape of a shovel, then silence. A little ash falls below. Stiff bristles brush across stone. No one hurries. The workers know the warmth of the machinery, the spaces between the wheels, and the weight of their tools. They speak only when needed, using brief words made familiar through repetition. Ash and soot are swept from the ground. A shovel is emptied, and a brush returns to its place beside the wall. Slowly, a space around the locomotive becomes orderly again. Near a shed doorway, cleaners attend to the engine lamps. Their glass must be wiped free of soot, their wicks trimmed to burn evenly, their oil reservoirs filled, and their reflectors cleaned. A worker lifts a lamp onto a wooden bench. He opens its little door and removes the burner. His cloth passes around the glass, leaving it clear. Beside him, another lamp waits in orderly pieces. There are no fluorescent work lights flooding the yard. Fixed lights and hand lanterns make small circles of yellow illumination. Within each one, skilled hands know where every catch, hinge, wick, and reservoir should be. The worker trims the wick, fills the reservoir, closes the lamp, and sets it gently aside. At the locomotive, the driver has begun another inspection. His lantern moves along the wheels, stopping at bearings and joints. Bearings allow parts to turn or slide while supporting great weight, and need oil to reduce friction and wear. From a narrow can, the driver lets a bead fall into the proper opening. It gleams briefly, then disappears. He examines the connecting rods that carry movement to the driving wheels. He looks at the brake gear beneath the frame and checks the couplings joining engine, tender, and carriages. A fitter joins him to study one wheel. They exchange a few low sentences, look along the rim, and touch the metal with practiced hands. Satisfied, they continue their inspection. Around them, many occupations meet. Drivers and firemen understand their engines on the road. Cleaners remove soot and old oil. Fitters inspect machinery and attend to repairs. Shed workers manage water, coal, lamps, and tools. Laborers clear ash and keep the servicing ground usable. No single pair of hands prepares a locomotive alone. The yard settles into a sequence of separate sounds: a brush across a footplate, a tool placed on a bench, a chain touching iron, water dripping from the crane. Then, for several moments, There is only the faint breathing of steam from a resting engine. The porter stands with his lantern lowered. Beyond him, the rails curve toward the station, their upper surfaces catching thin lines of light. Warm machines, brick sheds, and quiet figures rest within small pools of lamplight. Soon, the service locomotive will return beneath the great roof, ready to take its appointed place. For now, its crew continues the patient round. Water, coal, lamps, oil, wheels, rods, brakes, and couplings. Each item is considered in turn. Each small duty helps prepare the whole engine. Nothing is hurried, and nothing important is overlooked. From beyond the roofs comes the clear note of a bell. Another answers from the direction of the signal box, where levers, instruments, clocks, and careful records guide the movements of trains. The porter turns toward the tracks. There in the lamplit distance, the railway's quiet decisions are being made. Chapter 7. Signals and Station Time. The porter leads the way from the servicing yard, following a narrow path beside the rails. His lantern hangs low in one hand, casting a small, steady circle over the sleepers and gravel. Behind you, the locomotive continues its patient round of preparation. Ahead, another part of the railway's nightly work waits in the lamplight. The signal box stands above the junction, on a base of dark brick. Its upper room is lined with windows, allowing the signalman to see the tracks in several directions. Warm light rests behind the glass. Within, a figure moves from the instruments to the lever frame, and then pauses to look across the station approaches. The porter stops at the foot of the wooden stair. "Best place for seeing the road," he says quietly, "and for keeping it in order." He opens the little gate, and together you climb. The steps give a muted sound beneath each footfall. At the top, the porter knocks before entering. This is a working room, and the signalman alone is responsible for the lever frame. Inside, the air is warmer than the night outside. A small stove gives off an even heat. The windows are clean, the floorboards are swept, and the ledges beneath the glass hold telegraph instruments, bell plungers, and neat rows of labels. Above the desk, a clock ticks. Tick, then quiet. Tick. Along the center of the room stands the mechanical lever frame. Its levers rise in a close, orderly row, each fitted with a shaped handle. Small plates identify the points and signals connected to them. The porter gestures toward the frame, though he does not touch it. Each lever has its own work, he explains. Some levers operate semaphore signals outside, others move the points, the movable sections of track that guide a train from one route to another. When the signalman pulls a lever, the movement passes through rods, wires, cranks, and other mechanical linkages. The force travels out from the box, across the ground, and onward to the equipment beside the rails. The signalman studies an instrument. He glances through the windows, places one hand around a lever handle, and releases its catch. Then he draws the lever toward him with practiced firmness. There is a solid clunk. Far below, a length of rotting shifts. A set of points moves into its appointed position, bringing the rails into place for the proper route through the junction. Then quiet returns. Within and beneath the lever frame is a system called interlocking. Mechanical bars and locks prevent certain levers from being moved when their movements would conflict. A signal cannot ordinarily be cleared for a route while the points are set against it. Incompatible routes cannot simply be opened together. Interlocking does not make error or accident impossible. Railway safety still depends upon careful maintenance, clear rules, and attentive people. Yet, interlocking reduces the chance that an unsuitable combination of points and signals can be set. By 1895, mechanical lever frames have become central to railway operation. The Regulation of Railways Act of 1889 has helped to hasten the enforcement of several important safeguards. These include the interlocking of points and signals, continuous automatic brakes on passenger trains, and a system known as absolute block working. The porter turns toward a small instrument on the shelf. The boxes speak to one another, he says. Almost as he finishes, a bell sounds. One measured note, a pause, then a coded sequence follows, each stroke distinct from the next. The signalman listens closely. He answers by pressing a bell plunger in the proper pattern, and then makes an entry in the train register. His pen moves briefly across the ruled page. Under a simple description of absolute block working, the railway line is divided into sections, or blocks. Entry into each section is controlled so that trains remain properly separated. The principle is often described as one train in one block at a time. This is a useful way to understand it, although the complete rules include details and exceptions for different lines and circumstances. Neighboring signal boxes communicate through coded bell signals and telegraph instruments. One signalman can offer a train forward, and the next can acknowledge the message when the section is ready according to the rules. In this way, the railway keeps its movements ordered, even when the tracks ahead are hidden by darkness, distance, bends, or the broad station roof. Outside the window, a tall semaphore signal stands against the night. Its arm changes position to give an indication to an engine crew. A lamp mounted on the signal makes the indication visible after dark. A red light signifies danger. Other signal colors were not yet fully uniform among all British railway companies during this transitional period. The night railway of 1895 should not be imagined as following the later, familiar pattern of red, yellow, and green in every place. The engine crew watches the form and light appropriate to its own line, while the signalman carefully observes the instruments and the route. His work is not casual, even in this quiet hour. While trains are moving, his attention remains fixed upon the levers, bells, clock, and tracks beyond the windows. Yet the concentration in the room feels reassuring rather than tense. Every task has its sequence. Every message is acknowledged. Every movement is recorded. A distant locomotive gives a low breath of steam. The signalman checks the position of a semaphore arm and returns to the frame. A lever catch lifts. The lever moves. Clunk. A bell answers from another box. Then the clock can be heard again. Tick, tick. Railway time surrounds the room. There is the clock above the signalman's desk, the great station clock beneath the roof, and smaller clocks in offices and waiting rooms. Timetables depend upon their agreement. Telegraph time signals help the railway clocks remain aligned, carrying an agreed reference from place to place. Before railway travel became widespread, small differences in local time caused less inconvenience. But trains needed printed timetables, dependable connections, and a shared understanding of each stated minute. The railways therefore encouraged the wider standardization of time across Britain. By this late Victorian night, a clock is more than decoration. It is part of the station's working equipment. Clerks consult it in their offices, guards compare it with their watches. Porters glance toward it as departures approach. Engine crews and signalmen use its steady measure to help keep the railway's many separate duties in agreement. The porter looks from the clock to the lever frame. A station may appear still for a moment, yet time continues to pass through every part of it. A lamp is prepared before it is needed. A route is set before a train reaches it. A message travels from one signal box to the next. Each action takes its place in an orderly chain. Another bell message arrives. The notes are clear and evenly spaced. The signalman repeats the code, checks his register, and looks toward a dark line of vehicles beyond the platform lamps. The message concerns a van waiting in the sidings, ready to be brought toward the station when the route permits. The porter lowers his voice. "That will be for the night traffic," he says. "Parcels most likely. Newspapers too, before long." He gives the signalman a courteous nod. The signalman remains at his post, attentive to the instruments, the line, and the clock. You follow the porter back down the wooden stair. Behind you, the clock continues its measured ticking. A lever settles into place. Beyond the windows, a semaphore lamp shines steadily beside the rails. The porter's lantern moves toward the station, its small pool of light, crossing the gravel and sleepers. Ahead, the broad doors of the parcels office wait beneath the lamps. There, the railway's nighttime connections take a more tangible form. Mailbags, newspapers, milk churns, trunks, and labeled packages are being prepared for their journeys. Each will travel beneath the quiet guidance of bells, signals, timetables, and carefully kept time. Chapter 8. Parcels, Post, and Newspapers. The porter's lantern passes through broad doors and you follow him into the parcels office. Here the light is lower than beneath the great station roof. A shaded lamp stands upon a high wooden desk, casting a quiet circle over ledgers, labels, string, sealing wax, and a brass scale. Behind the desk, the parcels clerk works in a dark waistcoat, his sleeves fastened neatly at the wrists. He reads each label, compares it with an entry in the ledger, and adds a small pencil mark. Nothing is placed carelessly. Each object has a destination, a route, and usually a particular train by which it must travel. The porter hangs his lantern on a hook. "Plenty to go tonight," he says softly. Nearest the door are mail bags made of thick cloth, strong enough for repeated journeys in carts, vans, and railway carriages. Their mouths have been secured, and stout labels identify the towns toward which they are bound. Some contain ordinary letters, family news, bills, invitations, business instructions, and small messages composed at office desks. Other bags hold printed matter or official correspondence. Within each tied sack, many separate journeys have been gathered into one convenient load. At an ordinary station such as this, the bags are carried by hand to the correct van. A porter reads the label, a clerk consults his list, and the bag is lifted onto a handcart, wheeled across the platform, and passed into the care of railway or postal staff. Farther along the system, some mail may continue aboard a traveling post office. Specially fitted postal carriages of this kind have existed in Britain since 1838. Inside, postal workers sort letters while the train moves and cancel stamps during the journey. At selected places, apparatus has even allowed mailbags to be exchanged without the train stopping. That is not the ordinary sight here tonight. At this station, bags are counted beneath lamps, carried across the platform, and stored securely in a waiting van. Beside them stands a varied company of parcels, a wooden case addressed to a shopkeeper, boxes tied with cord, baskets covered with cloth, and one long package bearing a warning that it must not be laid flat. A narrow parcel contains commercial samples, perhaps cloth, buttons, paper, or some other small example sent by a manufacturer to a customer. The clerk places a smaller package upon the brass scale. The balance moves, then settles. He records the figure and attaches another label, smoothing it with his thumb. This steady work links the office with workshops, farms, warehouses, shops, and private homes. A parcel arriving by rail can complete within a day a journey that once required much longer arrangements. Yet this convenience depends upon modest tasks. Handwriting must be clear, labels correct, and weights accurately recorded. Each package must be sorted with care, and each van must move reliably from station to station. Most parcels travel not among seated passengers, but in luggage vans or guarded compartments intended for goods, baggage, and other items requiring oversight. The railway guard may have a compartment in or near such a van. Loads are secured against movement and arranged so that those needed first can be reached without disturbing everything else. Beyond the parcels office lies a cloakroom, where passengers may leave luggage for a time. Trunks, carpet bags, hat boxes, and portmanteaux wait beneath numbered checks. Some bear labels from earlier journeys. Their paper corners have softened, but the names of distant towns can still be read. A porter examines a leather trunk and eases it onto a handcart. The iron-rimmed wheels make a brief rolling sound upon the floor. Elsewhere, a van door opens with a hollow rumble. Cartwheels cross the paving, boots move over wooden boards, and now and then someone calls out a destination to be certain it has been heard correctly. Between these movements lie long, composed intervals. Paper turns. A pencil travels across a ledger. String is drawn around a parcel and tied. Beyond the wall, the station clock continues its measured course. Near another doorway stand several milk churns, their metal sides reflecting pale bands of lamplight. Milk is carried by rail from country districts toward growing towns and cities, though the scale and organization of this traffic vary by route and period. Here, in 1895, there is no need to imagine the larger, specialized milk workings of later decades. Tonight there are simply a few soundly covered churns, labeled and waiting among the station's other fresh goods. Nearby, baskets hold flowers protected by paper. Their petals are hidden, but a faint green scent lingers around the wrapping. A box of fresh fish is kept apart, where it can remain cool and be handled without delay. Perishable goods benefit greatly from regular railway timetables. Fish, flowers, milk, and other produce can leave one district after the day's work and reach another in time for the following market. Each basket, box, and churn rests briefly in this lamplit pause between one part of its journey and the next. Then come the newspapers. They arrive in firm bundles, folded and tied, their edges making close gray lines beneath the lamp. Some carry London news outward, others bring reports from regional towns. Before railways connected so many places, News might already be several days old when it reached a distant reader. Railway distribution has transformed that familiar delay. A station bookstall may now offer newspapers printed earlier the same day. Their pages carry political reports, shipping notices, market prices, advertisements, and accounts of faraway events. News that began the morning in a printing office may travel by rail through the evening and soon be waiting for readers at another station. The porter rests one hand on a bundle while the clerk checks its label. Bookstall first thing, he says, and some go on to the smaller stations. Each bundle has its route. Some will be opened here when morning comes. Others will remain in the van for towns farther down the line. They are placed so they can be removed in the proper order without shifting the surrounding parcels. Thus news travels beside letters, commercial samples, luggage, flowers, fish, and milk. A handwritten message and a printed newspaper may pass through the same station. A shopkeeper's package may rest beside a traveler's trunk. For a few quiet minutes, many parts of daily life are gathered beneath one roof. The last newspaper bundle is lifted onto the handcart. The porter wheels it toward the platform, where the luggage van waits with its broad door open. Inside, mailbags occupy one section. Passenger luggage rests where it can be identified, and the newspapers are placed where they will remain dry and can be reached at the proper station. The bundle is checked once more and set carefully in place. Back at the high desk, the clerk makes a final entry. His pencil scratches faintly across the paper, and the ledger closes. The van door slides shut, its latch settling with a firm, muted sound. For a moment, nothing else moves. Beyond the open office doors, lamps shine at measured distances. The polished rails pass beneath their light and continue quietly into the night. This part of the work is complete. Mailbags counted, parcels sorted, luggage labels checked, fresh goods ready, and the newspapers safely stored. The porter takes down his lantern. That is the last of the newspapers, he says. We might go somewhere warmer now. There will be a fire in the waiting room, and the refreshment room should still manage a cup of tea. Together you leave the parcels office. Behind you remain the ledgers, labels, brass scale, and empty handcarts. Ahead, beyond a polished door, waits the gentle warmth of the station after the evening rush. Chapter 9. Waiting Rooms After Dark. The porter opens the polished door, and the cool air of the platform gives way to the enclosed warmth of the station buildings. For a moment you stand between two worlds. Behind you, the broad roof, dark rails, and faint breath of steam. Ahead, a quiet corridor lit by shaded lamps. Its tiled floor has been cleaned until the pale squares hold small reflections. Framed timetables, company notices, and carefully lettered signs line the walls. Here the station clock is clearer than beneath the great roof. Tick. A pause, then another measured tick. The porter sets down his lantern and rubs his hands together. His work has carried him between warm rooms and cold platforms all evening, and he seems to appreciate each return to the fire. A substantial Victorian station may contain several rooms for passengers. A general waiting room, a ladies' waiting room with its own attendant, and separate accommodation for travelers holding different classes of ticket. Lavatories lie farther along the corridor, while small anterooms, doors, and partitions help keep drafts from the warmer spaces. Other stations arrange these things differently. Each railway company follows its own practices, and each station is shaped by its size, age, and needs. Some railways have abolished second class, while others continue to offer it. Some stations provide several distinct waiting rooms, others make do with one or two. There may be a ladies' room without a corresponding room for gentlemen, or a general room used by many kinds of passengers. Here the first-class waiting room lies behind a dark wooden door. The porter opens it quietly. A coal fire burns within a tiled fireplace. Its light moves over polished tables, a thick rug, padded chairs, and a long upholstered bench. Heavy curtains cover the windows, keeping out the sight of the night platform and softening the occasional glow of a passing lamp. Only two passengers occupy the room. One reads a newspaper beside the fire. The other sits with hands folded over a small traveling case. Neither looks up for long. The room asks for quiet, and quiet is willingly given. The porter checks that the coal scuttle is not empty, then closes the door. Such comfort is part of the price of a more expensive ticket. Victorian railway travel is divided by class, not only in the carriages, but also in fares, entrances, and waiting facilities. Those who pay less are generally given harder seating, plainer rooms, and fewer comforts. Warmth and ease are not equally available to every traveler. The general room is busier, the porter says, more coming and going. A short distance along the corridor, that room stands open. Its tiled floor is bare, its benches wooden, and its decoration limited to company notices, a clock, and a railway map marked with branching lines. Yet a fire burns here too. A workman rests with a wrapped parcel beside his boots. A woman keeps one hand upon a wicker basket. Two young men sit at opposite ends of a bench, quiet in their own thoughts. Their clothing, luggage, fares, and tickets may differ, but all have come indoors for the same reasons: warmth, perhaps some food, and a seat before the next stage of the journey. The fire settles softly in the grate. A red glow appears between darker pieces of coal. The station clock continues. Tick, a pause, then another tick. From farther along the corridor comes the faint sound of china being placed upon wood. The refreshment room should still have tea, the porter says. Inside, a lamp shines upon the counter, a row of cups, a glazed cupboard, and several covered dishes. The dark timber has been worn smooth where hands have rested while coins were counted, questions asked, and cups passed across. Behind the counter, a worker wipes a saucer with a clean cloth. Another carries a small bucket of coal toward the enclosed fireplace. Its warmth gathers around the tables, though the tiled floor near the doorway remains cool whenever a draft enters from the corridor. Station refreshment rooms offer practical food to travelers with limited time before departure. There may be tea and coffee, bread and buns, sandwiches and pies, or slices of cold meat. The choice depends upon the station, the company, and the hour. The quality varies. A bun fresh in the afternoon may be less fresh by midnight, and a hurriedly prepared sandwich may not be memorable. Even so, a hot drink is welcome after the open platform. The porter orders tea. Water is poured, and steam rises around the pot before fading into the lamplight. Two thick china cups appear with a small plate of bread and a modest piece of seed cake. You sit near the fireplace. The tea is dark and warm. The cake is plain, gently sweet, and easy to eat. Heat from the cup passes into your hands. The room smells faintly of tea, coal, polished wood, and ordinary food. Beyond the curtained glass, a lamp moves along the platform and disappears. No one speaks loudly. A traveler asks whether a northbound service is expected on time, and the answer comes in a low voice. A spoon touches a cup. A cupboard opens and closes. Coal settles in the fireplace. Behind this calm, the station staff remain at work. Someone carries fuel to the fires. Cups are cleared, washed, dried, and returned to the cupboard. Crumbs are brushed from tables, mud wiped from the floor, and lamps watched. The passengers may rest, because others remain awake. The door to the ladies' waiting room opens, and its attendant steps out carrying folded cloths. She exchanges a few practical words with the worker behind the counter, then continues along the corridor until her footsteps fade. The porter takes another sip of tea. He has spent the evening checking parcels, guiding luggage, answering questions, and crossing the platform beside handcarts. Now his lantern rests by the table, and his hands are wrapped around a warm cup. The first-class room is quieter and more richly furnished. Less expensive rooms are plainer, with harder seats and fewer comforts. Yet every night traveler seeks much the same thing: shelter from the draft, something to eat or drink, and a little time in which nothing is required except waiting. Outside, a pale shape passes beneath the platform lamps. Folded linen is being carried at orderly bundles by two attendants beside a waiting train. That will be for the sleeping car, the porter says. Only selected night services carry one, and arrangements differ between companies. This train has berths to be prepared before the passengers board. Beyond the warm room, a railway carriage is being changed from a place of travel into a place of rest. Linen must be arranged, blankets set in order, and lamps kept low and steady. The porter rises and takes up his lantern. You leave the warm table and return to the cooler corridor. Behind you remain the low fire, warm china, and nearly empty refreshment room. Ahead waits the sleeping car beneath the great station roof, its berths being made ready for the journey through the night. Chapter 10. Preparing the sleeping car. The platform air feels cool after the warmth of the refreshment room. For a few moments, the faint scents of tea and toast remain with you. Then they mingle with the familiar scents of the railway: warm metal, damp stone, lamp oil, and a trace of steam drifting beneath the great roof. Ahead, the attendants carry bundles of folded linen beside the waiting train. The cloth appears very white against the dark paint of the carriages. At the far end of the platform, an engine waits with little more than a subdued breath. It gives no sign of haste. A wisp of vapor rises, spreads beneath the glass, and slowly disappears. The sleeping car stands among the ordinary coaches, distinguished by small lettering upon its varnished side. Such a carriage is still an uncommon provision in Britain in the year 1895. Sleeping cars are established on selected long-distance services, but they are not attached to every night train. Their accommodation is principally a premium comfort. In many cases, a traveler requires a first-class ticket and must also pay an additional charge for a sleeping berth. The arrangements differ between railway companies. Pullman-operated services may use their own designs, while the railway companies develop vehicles according to their particular requirements. Some cars contain single berths, others have small compartments. Some also provide a seated space where passengers may rest before retiring for the night. The porter opens the carriage door and steps aside, allowing the attendants to pass. You follow them up the short flight of steps. Inside, the sounds of the station become softer. The walls are paneled in varnished wood. Amber carriage lamps shine gently upon brass fittings, leather upholstery, and pale bundles of linen. The narrow corridor is clean and carefully arranged. Its windows have become dark mirrors, reflecting quiet figures and small, steady lights. One attendant places his pile of linen upon a leather seat. The other opens the door of the first berth. The compartment is compact. It does not resemble a spacious hotel room, nor is it intended to do so. Every part has been designed to make careful use of the limited width of a railway carriage. There is a berth, a small place for clothing and hand luggage, a lamp, and a modest wash basin that can be folded away when it is not required. The attendant lowers the berth into position. Its fittings move with a soft wooden sound, followed by the muted click of a catch. He presses one hand against the frame to make certain that it is secure. Then he takes up a clean sheet. He unfolds it once, and then again. The linen opens in the amber light, its creases still holding the neat geometry of the laundry. He lays it across the berth, draws one corner smooth, and tucks it beneath the mattress. At the other end, he repeats the same unhurried action. There is no wasted movement. Each fold has been made many times before. A second sheet follows. Then comes a pillow in a clean linen cover. Last of all, the attendant lifts a wool blanket. It is substantial, yet not overly heavy, and its surface is soft beneath his hand. He spreads it from end to end and smooths it with one slow movement. Linen, wool, leather, and varnished wood gather the lamplight in different ways. The linen looks pale and quiet. The wool absorbs the light. The leather carries a low sheen. The polished wood reflects narrow bands of warm gold. At the wall, the attendant tests the small lamp. Carriage lighting in this period may be supplied by oil or by compressed oil gas carried for the journey. Electric lighting has been tried and fit into some selected railway vehicles, but it is not yet universal. Here a steady gas flame burns behind protective glass. The attendant turns the control a little. The flame becomes lower, but it does not go out. Its glow settles softly across the woodwork. Next, he examines the wash basin. It is a compact tip-up fitting, folded into the wall when not in use. He releases the catch and brings the basin gently down. A limited quantity of water has been provided, together with plain soap and a folded cloth. Water supplies aboard a carriage are modest. The basin is intended for simple washing, rather than anything elaborate. There is no private bathroom attached to each berth. The toilet is shared and situated elsewhere in the carriage, as is usual for sleeping accommodation of this period. The attendant lifts the basin again. It settles into its recess, and the catch closes with a slight tap. The porter remains near the compartment door, holding his lantern low. Everything has its place, he says quietly. The attendants continue without further conversation. In the next compartment, another sheet is opened, another pillow is placed, another wool blanket is drawn level across the berth. A curtain is tested along its rail. Elsewhere, a wooden door is closed and opened again, ensuring that its latch moves freely. Privacy may be provided by curtains, by doors, or by a combination of the two, depending upon the design of the sleeping car. A documented Great Western sleeping car from the later years of the decade shows how carefully such limited space could be arranged. That car had 8 single berths, a central seated compartment, connecting doors between some berths, and gas lighting. It is one example of what was possible near this time, rather than a universal pattern. Other companies and Pullman-operated services use different arrangements. Here, a central seated section remains ready for passengers who may wish to sit for a while before entering their berths. The leather seats have been brushed. A small table has been wiped clean. Its brass edging catches the low light without shining too brightly. Near the roof, an attendant adjusts a ventilator by hand. Heating and ventilation vary between companies and vehicles. They cannot be regulated with the precision of a modern thermostat. Instead, the attendant makes a modest adjustment, judging the cool platform air, the warmth within the carriage, and the number of passengers expected aboard. The ventilator moves a little. A faint current of fresh air passes along the corridor. Then the slow work continues. A sheet is unfolded, a corner is tucked beneath a mattress, a pillow is placed at the head of a berth, a wool blanket is drawn smooth, a lamp is checked and lowered, a basin is brought down, inspected, and folded back into the wall. A curtain is drawn across, then opened again for boarding. Each action is small. Together the actions transform the carriage from a place of seated travel into a place of rest. Outside the dark windows, the station clock advances almost unnoticed. Steam passes beneath the roof in a thin veil. Somewhere beyond the carriage, a handcart rolls along the platform, its wheels softened by distance. From the waiting rooms comes the faint closing of a door. Within the sleeping car, the attendants move from compartment to compartment. Linen opens beneath their hands. Wool settles over each berth. Leather seats wait in the amber light. Brass catches a gentle gleam, and the varnished walls hold quiet reflections of lamps and passing figures. No part of the preparation is hurried. One attendant pauses to check a lamp once more. Another runs a hand lightly over the edge of a blanket, removing a final crease. A latch is pressed into place. A curtain ring is guided along its rail so that it will move without catching when a passenger draws it later in the night. The porter watches from the corridor. His lantern remains low beside him. Beyond the carriage wall, the resting engine releases another quiet breath, so soft that it seems to belong to the station itself. At last, the remaining bundles of linen have become a row of prepared berths. The attendants gather the empty wrappers and fold them neatly. One checks the shared facilities elsewhere in the carriage. The other walks the length of the corridor, making certain that the passage is clear and that every door, catch, and fitting rests properly in its place. He returns to the first berth. The sheet remains smooth. The pillow is ready. The wool blanket lies level from side to side. The wash basin is folded away. The lamp burns steadily behind its glass. The final curtain is tested and then left open. Now the corridor lamps are lowered. Their amber circles become smaller and gentler upon the varnished wood. The dark windows reflect the lamps in a quiet row, one after another, stretching toward the far end of the carriage. The sleeping car is ready. Soon the waiting passengers will enter quietly. They will bring only the small sounds of coats, tickets, soft footsteps, and carefully stowed belongings. Chapter 11. Passengers settle in. The first passengers approach without haste. They are guided along the platform by the experienced night porter, whose shaded lamp casts a warm oval upon the paving stones. Their footsteps mingle with the quieter sounds of the station. A handcart wheel turns somewhere beneath the roof. Steam murmurs beside the rails. Above it all, the station clock continues its measured ticking. At the door of the sleeping car, an attendant waits in a dark, neatly buttoned uniform. He receives each ticket beneath the corridor lamp, glancing first at the journey and then at the berth reservation. Sleeping accommodation is not provided on every night train in Britain. In this year of 1895, it belongs mainly to selected services covering longer distances. Even on those trains, a traveler may need a first-class ticket and a separate payment for the berth itself. The arrangement varies from one railway company to another, and from one route to the next. Some sleeping cars have private compartments. Others place curtained berths beside a narrow corridor. The fittings may differ according to the date and design of the carriage. There is no single plan followed everywhere. Yet the purpose remains much the same. The sleeping car offers passengers a sheltered place in which to pass the long hours between distant stations. A gentleman at the carriage step hands his smaller case to the porter. The porter lifts it with both hands and sets it inside. The attendant turns it carefully, making sure that it will not obstruct the passage. "This way, sir," he says. His voice is low, as though the quieter character of the carriage has already begun. The passenger follows him along the corridor. Amber light rests upon polished wood, brass catches, and the dark glass of the windows. Beyond that glass, the platform lamps seem to float in the night. Their reflections shift gently across the carriage panels, whenever a veil of steam drifts past. At the appointed compartment, the attendant indicates a rack for smaller luggage. Larger trunks have already been labeled and placed in the luggage van, for there is little room to spare in a sleeping compartment. The passenger keeps only what he may need during the night. There is a small case, an overcoat, perhaps a book or folded newspaper, and a modest leather bag containing washing things. The berth waits behind its open curtain. A white sheet covers the mattress. The pillow is small and firm. A wool blanket lies smoothly across the bed, just as the attendants arranged it. The compartment is comfortable by the standards of railway travel, though it is compact rather than grand. Every fitting makes careful use of the limited space. The sleeping car remains plainly a railway carriage, designed to move through the darkness rather than a hotel room standing still. The passenger removes his hat and places it upon a hook. His coat follows. He sits for a moment on the edge of the berth and unfastens his boots. Then he sets them together beneath the seat, their toes pointing neatly toward the wall. On some services, boots left outside might be cleaned by an attendant, though customs differ from company to company. Here they remain inside, arranged quietly and kept out of the way. More travelers arrive at the carriage door. There is no sudden crowding. The porter admits them in a steady order, checking the labels on their hand luggage and directing them toward the attendant. A woman traveling with an older companion pauses on the step while her bag is passed inside. The attendant confirms their compartment and leads them through the narrow passage. The corridor requires courtesy. When two people meet, one waits beside a doorway while the other passes. Coats are drawn close. Bags are lifted clear of the polished panels. Apologies are soft and brief. Soon the passage is clear again. In their compartment, the two passengers find the berths already prepared. Depending upon the design of the carriage, the sleeping places may be arranged one above another. An upper berth can be folded away during the day and lowered for use at night. A small ladder or step provides access. Curtains offer privacy, though the enclosure still carries the gentle reminders of the railway. The rails lie below. The station stands just outside. Far ahead, the locomotive waits. The attendant explains the lamp and points out the bell by which assistance may be requested. He shows them the folding wash basin, ready to be lowered from its cabinet. Water is limited and must be used thoughtfully. A shared lavatory is located elsewhere in the car. It has already been inspected and will be kept as orderly as the journey allows. When the explanation is complete, the attendant withdraws. He closes the door with a gentle turn of the latch. Along the platform, the night porter returns with another small group. His lamp swings only slightly at his side. He knows where each reserved passenger belongs. He remembers which trunk has been sent to the luggage van and which valise is to remain near its owner. One traveler asks whether the case above him will be secure. "It will ride well there, sir," the porter replies. He tests the strap with one practiced hand. It holds firmly. The porter gives a small nod, then continues along the carriage. The sleeping car gradually fills with modest signs of occupation. A hat appears upon one hook, and a coat upon another. A pair of gloves rests beside a folded timetable. A watch is wound and placed carefully within reach. Pages turn beneath a shaded lamp. A curtain ring travels along its brass rod with a faint and even whisper. Not everyone prepares for sleep at once. Some passengers remain seated for a little while, reading an evening newspaper, or looking through the window at the station. Beyond the glass, porters continue their work beside the other carriages, A guard walks slowly along the train. Farther ahead, the locomotive releases a quiet breath. Steam spreads low across the platform, then thins beneath the great roof. The attendants pass from one compartment to the next. They answer simple questions and confirm that each traveler has found the correct place. Tickets and berth reservations are checked again where necessary. A blanket is adjusted. A stubborn latch receives a patient hand. One lamp is lowered because its light is brighter than its occupant prefers. With every completed task, the carriage becomes calmer. Conversations shorten. Newspapers are folded along their familiar creases. Traveling clocks are placed near pillows. Boots disappear beneath seats, and collars are loosened behind drawn curtains. The scents of wool, clean linen, leather, and polished timber settle together in the warm air. The class distinctions of the Victorian Railway are present even here. Sleeping accommodation is costly, and therefore beyond the reach of many passengers. Elsewhere on night trains, travelers may sit through the long hours in ordinary compartments, making themselves as comfortable as space and circumstance permit. The sleeping car provides greater privacy and rest, but it is a particular provision for those able to pay for it. It is not a comfort shared by everyone. The night porter makes one final journey beside the carriage. Through its windows he sees softened lamps and drawn curtains. At the open door he exchanges a few quiet words with the attendant. The passenger list is complete. The luggage is secure. No case or parcel remains upon the platform. The attendant steps inside and pulls the carriage door shut. The latch settles into place with a muted click. Within the car, the corridor lamps remain low enough to guide anyone who may rise during the journey. Behind the curtains, blankets are drawn up and pillows are arranged. The train has not yet moved, but the carriage already possesses an enclosed stillness of its own. Outside, the station clock continues its patient measure. Another pale cloud of steam passes beneath the roof. The guard walks toward the rear of the train, checking each door as he goes. Inside the sleeping car, the last newspaper is folded. A final book closes. One lamp is turned down, and then another. Voices fade until only the smallest sounds remain. A brass fitting settles softly. Fabric moves against fabric. Somewhere along the corridor, a curtain gives a final whisper across its rod. And beneath these quiet sounds lies the faint breath of the waiting engine, carried gently along the rails.